And that's my experience in East Timor. And I have done some modest mediation work even in Colombia. I was in Colombia in '98, long before Timor independence. Arriving there, I was asked by UNICEF, actually a Filipino working with UNICEF in Colombia. He had heard of me and suggested maybe I could. His name is Cecilio, don't remember last name. Adorno, that's right, Adorno. Later he came to Timor with UNICEF. And he was in Mozambique. So they asked me whether I would help seeking the release of some hostages held by ELN, one of the factions in Colombia. Well, after such a complex, complicated process, I managed to meet with rebels in the mountains, but met also with their leaders in jail. I was allowed to meet with their leaders in jail because those holding power on the rebels in the mountain were those leaders in jail. A bit like Shannon when he was in Sipinan, he was the one who was holding power on our fighters back in Timor. And one thing I told them, speaking in Spanish, I told him, no one is behind me. I'm not an American, I'm not a French, I'm not German, I have no power. You know where I come from, you know what my country is. We stand for very little in terms of power. But let me tell you, and I will not give you lectures to the two compañeros in the room, but let me tell you one thing. If in my own country, in our course of our struggle, the leaders back home kidnap Indonesian civilians, school teachers, murder in the name of the cause, I would say, speaking in Spanish, I said a very strong word in Spanish, which I will not repeat here. I told them, anyway, a bit softer, I would say, hell with the cause. I don't believe in any cause or in any religion and ideology where the ends justify the means, in that you find intellectual, political, religious arguments to kill innocent people. Well, I told this also to Jerry Adams. Before he became well known as a peacemaker, meeting privately in Belfast. I didn't want to criticize IRA tactics, but I told Jerry Adams what my stance is in relation to our struggle. I said, Jerry, if ever in my country the leadership of the movement choose as tactic the kidnapping, the murder of innocent Indonesian civilians, I would say, hell with this struggle. I will not be part of it. Because if you, in the process of your struggle for independence, you use indiscriminate violence, for whatever reasons, you can be absolutely angry, and rightly angry, because of decades, generations of abuse. But then you should use the same tactics of your opponents, well, you are no better than them. And are you going to be able to abandon the cultural violence in your mind upon achieving independence? Well, one last example. I was given a lecture at London School of Economics a few years ago. One Palestinian student came to me in the end and he said, why we have achieved independence and we not, we Timor, and why they not, and so on and so on. And I told him, Listen, brother, I don't want to give you any lecture, but let me tell you the following. Through force, you are not going to beat mighty Israel. But just imagine 4 million Palestinians in Gaza, in West Bank, in Israel, everybody. Sit down, civil disobedience, you paralyze entire Israel. And the millions of Israelis themselves, the millions around the world, would go with you. One reason for your problem is many of you use so much indiscriminate violence against anyone who is a Jew, anyone who is Israeli, and then extends other, hijack Islam and extend that resentment, that hatred towards every other nationality around the world that does not espouse that kind of interpretation of the Quran. So where have you people led your struggle? And he was totally stunned. I say, you ask my opinion? Well, that is what I believe is the best options for our country. And standing here as someone who survived an assassination attempt, I still say, I feel sorry for those who today are not in freedom, today they are in jail in my own country for acts of stupidity, of absurdity, irrationality, but for which I doubt they are directly responsible. They have become also casualties of the context in which events happened in 2006, before, and 2007. In dealing with situations like ours, we have to make an effort to detach ourselves from our own sentiments and try to understand the other side on the dividing. It is a huge task for us to build the country. I give you some statistics that sometimes are a bit interesting. 2 years ago, our annual per capita income was less than $500. Today, our nominal annual per capita income, 2 years later, is over $4,000. In 10 years' time, sorry, don't clap because it is not out of our, I will explain. In 10 years from now, projection will be our annual per capita income, nominal, will be $38,000, higher than today's Australia. Well, that is not our creation. It's God, in his extreme generosity towards us, gave us oil and gas. In 2002, we signed the first agreement with Australia. 2004 began the oil and gas. And then because of oil price going up, our share went up significantly. My point is only to say that in spite of current bonanza in revenues, we get something like $150 million, $200 million a month in revenues, plus at least, I would say, $200 million in international assistance. Our budget today stands about to $700 million, from only $70 million in 2002, plus $200 million in aid, about $800 million, $900 million. But the real income of the people has not changed. The question is how you translate this nominal income into real income. That is the challenge of countries like East Timor and others in similar situation. How the leadership that cannot complain of not having money, because in the past we had a good excuse. The donors don't give us money, they reduce the money, so you blame them. Well, now we have the resources. Well, the government of Prime Minister Xanana Guzmão is very, very deeply inspired by the suffering of the people. He told me the other day, when he decided the government to push for what is a bit controversial of a new power generating initiative. I'm not even saying it because some environmentalists here in this room might start shouting at me, but I'm totally innocent on this because the foreign minister is here. But we decide to move in the short to medium term to heavy fuels. Because the Prime Minister said in 2 years he wants every village in Timor to have electricity. So we are spending something like $300 million or so in new equipment for the heavy fuels, together with transmission lines. So that in 2 years, he said, so that at least the people have some immediate benefits of independence. While at the same time, the government has already commissioned a very reputed international group to do a feasibility study on the longer-term energy options for Timor that could combine solar, wind, hydro, biodiesel, maybe. We will see what they will come up with. But this will take maybe 10 years to set it up. That's why, so my point is to say the government has to really find shortcuts in delivering to the people. Of course, with due respect to the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund, I think some of the brightest people in the world go to the World Bank and the IMF. But surprisingly, with so many brain power in the World Bank and IMF, often they give us so many wrong advices. Yeah. They start criticizing the government for this heavy fuel initiative, but then I see some private internal documentation, even from the very environmentalists Norwegians, who actually had advised the government that for small countries like Timor, the best option in the immediate future is heavy fuels. They're cheaper. And our contribution to pollution, well, you know, ask United States and others. We know the cost of it, but this is for a short period. So this is only to say some of the difficult challenges we face, how to quickly address the legitimate concerns of the people. Turning back to the Philippines to conclude, your country have inspired us tremendously over the years. When finally the people's movement, led by Cory Aquino, took power, moved into Malacañang Palace, we thought, well, now it's going to be irreversible. It took a bit longer than we thought, but in terms of democracy spreading elsewhere in Asia, but you were the pioneers in this region of the world.